One of my favourite movies of all time is the 1961 film Judgment at Nuremberg by Stanley Kramer. It takes place in 1948, towards the end of the Nuremberg trials, which saw the conviction of Nazi war criminals. It centres around the trial of 4 German judges accused of crimes against humanity, with the theme of following orders being prevalent. However, there's something hinted at in the film that I believe is much more relevant to today. Throughout the film, we are teased with information on how the Nazi regime eroded the separation of powers in the Weimar Republic, filling all branches of government with loyal Nazi party members to build their totalitarian state. One of these branches, the primary one focused on in the movie, is the judiciary. In the film, we're told about how, rather than acting independently and impartially in service of the law, as all judges in democracy should do, the 4 men on trial acted in service of the party, sentencing innocent men to death for their race, disability, or disobedience. The film serves as a warning as to how important the separation and independence of the judiciary is in any functioning and free country. But this message does not seem to have reached the rulers of one country, a country which, for the entirety of her history, has fought foreign oppressor after foreign oppressor, all the way up until her independence in 1989. But this fight for freedom is being reversed with each passing day. I am of course talking about Poland. A fundamental characteristic of any well-functioning and free democracy is the separation of powers needed to ensure justice. In Poland, the government is divided into 3 branches. The legislative branch consists of the Sejm, the Parliament, and the Senate, elected by the people and is in charge of creating laws. The executive branch consists of various ministers, including the Prime Minister, and are appointed by the President. They are in charge of signing or vetoing laws created by the legislative branch. And finally, there's the judiciary, which consists of judges and is in charge of deciding whether or not those laws are constitutional. It's a lot of complex information to take in all at once, but what the most important thing to know is that one branch makes the laws, one branch signs the laws, and one branch allows the laws, and that each of these 3 branches are independent of the other. This system is in place in all governments that are considered democratic. The judiciary is especially important. Its independence from the other 2 branches means that even if laws are created and signed that threaten liberty, human rights and democracy, the judiciary has the power to dismiss them. But this view is not shared by the ruling Polish party, the Law and Justice Party, or PiS for short. They believe that this separation of powers causes the carrying of justice to become inefficient. And so, after their election victory in 2015, where the party received an outright majority in the parliament, which hadn't happened since the fall of communism in 1989, PiS filled the Polish judiciary with loyal party members, effectively allowing the party to pass laws virtually unopposed. Apologists for the PiS government say this was a necessary move to remove the legacy of the communist regime and to gain sovereignty over the judiciary, in other words, fighting totalitarianism with totalitarianism light. Following this, the party then proposed new constitutional reforms to reduce the number of seats in the parliament and in the Senate, but more importantly, to allow the president to pass laws by decree without the need of parliament or Senate permission. This was the beginning of a long road towards the party's consolidation of power and their crusade to weaken Polish democracy by removing the independence of the judiciary and reducing the power of the elected parliament. However, for average Poles, these government reforms didn't really have much of a direct effect. It was the party's media laws that began to put their intentions on full display. Within weeks of their 2015 election victory, PiS set about giving the government direct control of public broadcasting. Following this, a purge began. Previous public media management were fired or forced to resign and replaced with party mouthpieces. In December 2015, the Small Media Law was passed, which terminated the management of TV and radio to allow for their direct appointment from the Treasury Minister. It sounds a lot like meaningless jargon, but this law effectively gave full control of public TV and radio to the government. The small media law led to 225 Polish journalists leaving public media due to layoffs or resignations, and was declared unconstitutional. But due to the party's weakening of the government's judiciary, the Constitutional Tribunal allowed the law to pass regardless. After the small media law, PiS began working on a big media law, which fell through in favour of a tamer bridge law. The bridge law established a National Media Council that would be in charge of appointing management and supervisors of public media, giving the ruling party a key role in who was appointed. Although this law is bad enough, you have to look at the failed big media law to see what PiS's intentions truly were. If it had been passed, the big media law would have allowed only those who endorsed the views of the President, the Prime Minister and the Parliament into public media positions. It would have required public media to preserve national traditions, patriotic and Christian values, which would have been whatever the party deemed as such, a clear violation of freedom of speech and freedom of expression. Since PiS came to power in 2015, Poland has fallen from 15th place to 59th on the World Press Freedom Index. But what's even more troubling is what national traditions and Christian values the party wants to uphold. On paper, PiS is very similar to other Western conservative parties. They state they are pro-life, traditional and pro-family, nothing which in theory is morally wrong. But PiS has perverted these values into something unrecognizable by those in the West. They are pro-life, they are against abortion, so much so that they attempted to take advantage of COVID-19 restrictions to tighten abortion laws without the need of a vote. They are traditional and wish to preserve their national identity, something which apparently involves withdrawing from an international convention that aims to tackle domestic violence against women. A convention that has saved hundreds of lives, that has introduced laws against forced marriage, female genital mutilation and rape in countries that didn't previously have them. Their reason for withdrawal was, it doesn't respect religion. Any religion that is opposed to an international convention aiming to get rid of violence against women does not deserve to be respected. But perhaps their most infamous stance is their pro-family one, which has made the party notoriously homophobic. Poland, like most all Eastern European countries, has always had a poor track record of gay rights. In 1999, sexual orientation was removed from the non-discrimination clause of the Polish constitution, effectively decriminalizing homophobic discrimination.
Właściwie to jest pedofilia, która wkracza do szkół. Wiem coś na ten temat, ponieważ osoba z mojej najbliższej rodziny jest tej zarazie poddana.
The Polish government frequently bans LGBT demonstrations and protests on the grounds that they are offensive, a stance which contradicts freedom of speech and expression, and those who are offended are always those in charge. In 2005, then Prime Minister Kazimierz Marcinkiewicz said if a person tries to infect others with their homosexuality, then the state must intervene. Deputy of the Polish National Assembly in 2006, Wojciech Wierciejski, said if deviants begin to demonstrate, they should be hit with batons. Kazimierz Michał Ujazdowski, who is currently Poland's Minister of Culture, said in early 2005 that homosexuals promote madness and that PiS's rule will indeed be for them a dark night. These are not just some bigots in the middle of nowhere. These are the people who are leading Poland, some of them still to this day, and their willingness to openly say these things has emboldened discrimination against LGBT Polish citizens. Poland's largest NGO, LAMBDA, reported that 35% of LGBT Polish people have experienced some form of verbal or physical violence, 25% being physical and 13.5% being verbal, many experiencing both. Out of all those who reported their abuse, only a third received police action. 5.6% of cases were even met with hostile reactions from the Polish police. In December 2004 in Łódź, 2 men drinking in a park saw a transvestite searching through litter bins. They then proceeded to push him to the ground, undressed him and beat him to death. The courts concluded the attack was motivated by the victim's sexuality, and the perpetrators were only sentenced to 6 years and 6 years 2 months respectively. In Torun in 2007, 2 men kissed outside a club and were beaten by a gang of men calling them faggots. What's more depressing is that this incident was not reported because the victims were more afraid of the police than the criminals that beat them. There have been numerous cases of city guards in Warsaw verbally and physically abusing homosexuals as if they were common criminals. And these are only the incidents that we are aware of. There are many lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender Poles who have experienced violence such as this, yet who are too afraid to speak up or tell anyone about it, all because the ruling party reinforces this ignorant attitude towards gay rights. When reading about the current Polish political climate, it's easy to feel pessimistic. A party slowly transforming a once free republic into an authoritarian state with little regard for the rights of minorities or for freedom of speech. A state which is almost attempting to become some kind of quasi-Belarus. But that's just the surface. Underneath is a growing movement of Poles who are fed up with peace's status quo, who want to see the return of liberty and equality in Poland. In June this year, the Polish presidential election was held, where the peace candidate ANDRZEJ DUDA won re-election. On the surface this seems like a continuation of what came before, until you look at the margins of the vote. DUDA only won 51% of the vote, showing that almost half the country wants change. This opposition can only grow in the coming years, if the government continues on its trajectory. At the moment, the state of gay rights are grim, but that too is changing. The Polish youth is becoming increasingly more tolerant and accepting of LGBT people than their older citizens, something which will creep its way into legislation as they become part of the voter base. The next parliamentary elections aren't until 2023, and things are going to get worse before they get better, but they will get better. Recent protests in Belarus, Hong Kong, Bulgaria, and Lebanon have shown us that no regime, no matter how authoritarian, is exempt from accountability. Peace will be held to account. It'll just take some time.